The unexpected challenge. Amanda Reynolds adjusted her modest blazer as she walked through the imposing courthouse doors. Unlike the confident groups of lawyers chatting in the hallways, she preferred working alone. Her worn leather briefcase contained months of careful preparation, evidence that would either save Eleanor Wilson's home or expose Amanda to the wrath of one of the city's most feared judges. Eleanor Wilson, 72, had lived in her family home for over 40 years. When Midwest Banking Corporation claimed she'd missed mortgage payments, Eleanor knew something was wrong. She'd never missed a payment in her life. That's when she found Amanda Reynolds, a quiet lawyer who took cases others wouldn't touch. "You sure about this?" Richard Barnes, Amanda's colleague, caught up with her at the courthouse entrance. His weathered face showed genuine concern. "Judge Montgomery doesn't play games. They call him the Hammer for a reason." Amanda nodded, clutching her briefcase tighter. "Someone has to stand up for Mrs. Wilson. She'll lose everything if we don't fight this." "Just be careful," Richard warned. "Montgomery has connections everywhere. Half the city's elite owe him favors." Amanda had done her research. Judge William Montgomery, 20 years on the bench, known for harsh rulings against anyone challenging big banks. What most people didn't know were his financial ties to several major institutions, including Midwest Banking Corporation. As they entered the courtroom, Amanda noticed the opposing counsel. James Preston himself had shown up, unusual for what should have been a routine foreclosure. His team of lawyers in expensive suits whispered among themselves, their confident smirks designed to intimidate. "Why would Preston come personally?" Richard whispered. "Because they know this case isn't what it seems," Amanda replied softly. Mrs. Wilson sat at the defendant's table, her hands trembling slightly. Amanda gave her a reassuring smile and sat beside her. "Everything will be all right," she said, hoping she was right. The bailiff's voice boomed through the courtroom, "All rise for the Honorable Judge William Montgomery." Judge Montgomery entered with the confidence of absolute authority. His silver hair was perfectly styled, his black robe seemed more regal than others, and his piercing eyes scanned the room like searchlights. At 65, he was an institution in this courthouse, and he knew it. "Be seated," he commanded, his voice echoing through the chamber. Amanda observed him carefully. This wasn't just any judge. This was a man considering a political career after retirement, someone who couldn't afford scandals or challenges to his authority. "First case," the clerk announced, "Midwest Banking Corporation versus Eleanor Wilson. Foreclosure proceedings." Judge Montgomery's eyes locked onto Amanda, surprise flickering across his face. He'd clearly expected this case to be handled by a senior partner, not some quiet lawyer he'd never seen before. "Counsel, identify yourselves for the record," he instructed. James Preston stood, his voice smooth and practiced. "James Preston of Preston and Associates, representing Midwest Banking Corporation, Your Honor." Amanda rose next. "Amanda Reynolds, representing Mrs. Eleanor Wilson, Your Honor." "Ms. Reynolds," Judge Montgomery said, drawing out her name with barely concealed condescension. "I don't believe I've seen you in my courtroom before." "I typically handle cases in the Eastern District, Your Honor," Amanda responded politely. The judge nodded, a thin smile appearing. "Well, I trust you'll find our proceedings educational. Mr. Preston, you may begin." As Preston launched into his opening statement with practiced confidence, Amanda listened quietly, taking occasional notes. To observers, she might have seemed overwhelmed by Preston's polished delivery. In reality, she was picking apart every claim, identifying the discrepancies she'd spent months documenting. What neither the judge nor Preston knew was that Amanda had discovered something that would change everything. The question was, would Judge Montgomery allow her to present it? The setup. Preston's opening statement was a masterpiece of legal theater. The bank's case seemed airtight, missed payments, proper notifications, standard foreclosure protocols. He spoke with the confidence of someone who'd already won, occasionally glancing at Judge Montgomery with knowing looks. The defendant, Mrs. Wilson, fell behind on her mortgage payments beginning in March of last year, Preston declared, his voice carrying across the courtroom. Despite multiple notices and opportunities to cure the default, she failed to bring her account current. The bank has followed all proper procedures. Amanda watched the judge's face carefully. Montgomery nodded approvingly at Preston's presentation, his expression growing more stern when his eyes shifted to Amanda and Mrs. Wilson. Furthermore, Preston continued, the defendant's claims of payment are unsupported by bank records. Our computer systems show a clear pattern of delinquency beginning exactly 13 months ago. When Preston finished, Judge Montgomery's tone was notably warmer. Thank you, Mr. Preston. Very thorough presentation. Ms. Reynolds, your opening statement. Amanda stood, portfolio in hand. This was the moment she prepared for. Your Honor, we contend that this foreclosure is fundamentally fraudulent. Mrs. Wilson's payment history shows no delinquency until the bank's computer system was upgraded last year. We have documentation proving all payments were made on time. Judge Montgomery's expression hardened immediately. That's a serious accusation, counsel. Fraud is not a word we use lightly in this courtroom. We have the evidence to support it, Your Honor. I'm sure you believe you do, the judge replied, his condescension now open. But I advise you to be very careful before alleging fraud against a respected financial institution like Midwest Banking. Amanda remained unfazed. I'm quite certain, Your Honor. The judge's eyes narrowed. Proceed with your evidence presentation, Ms. Reynolds. But I warn you, if you waste this court's time with baseless accusations, there will be consequences. Amanda began presenting her case methodically. She had bank statements, canceled checks, and electronic transfer records showing Mrs. Wilson had never missed a payment. But every piece of evidence was met with objections from Preston and skeptical looks from Judge Montgomery. Your Honor, Preston interrupted during Amanda's presentation, these documents could easily be fabricated. Our bank's computer systems are state-of-the-art and have never shown such discrepancies. Sustained, Judge Montgomery ruled before Amanda could respond. Ms. Reynolds, do you have any evidence from the bank's own records? Your Honor, the bank has refused to provide access to their complete records. However, I have testimony from Mrs. Wilson and her neighbors who witnessed her making payments. Hearsay, Preston objected. Sustained, Montgomery ruled again, his impatience growing. Ms. Reynolds, this court deals in facts, not stories. If you cannot provide concrete evidence from official sources, I suggest you advise your client to accept the bank's offer. Amanda felt the walls closing in, but she wasn't finished. Your Honor, I'd like to call Mrs. Wilson to testify on her own behalf. Judge Montgomery sighed heavily. Very well, but keep it brief. This court's time is valuable. Eleanor Wilson took the stand, her voice shaking as she described 40 years of never missing a payment. She spoke about her late husband's military service, their careful budgeting, and her confusion when the bank claimed she was delinquent. Mrs. Wilson, Judge Montgomery interrupted, testimony is one thing, but bank records are another. The computer doesn't lie. But Your Honor, Mrs. Wilson said, her voice growing stronger, I have my own records. I've kept every receipt, every confirmation number. That's enough, Montgomery cut her off. Step down. As Mrs. Wilson returned to her seat, Amanda could see the writing on the wall. The judge had made up his mind before the case began. But she had one more card to play, one that would change everything. Your Honor, Amanda said, standing once more, I have one final piece of evidence that I believe will clarify this matter completely. Judge Montgomery looked at his watch impatiently. Make it quick, Ms. Reynolds. I have other cases to hear. Amanda reached into her briefcase and pulled out a thin folder. Inside was something she discovered during her investigation, something that connected Judge Montgomery directly to this case in a way that would shock everyone in the courtroom. Your Honor, I'd like to present bank records showing payments made by Mrs. Wilson, but I also have documentation regarding the relationship between Midwest Banking Corporation and certain, interested parties. Preston shot to his feet. Objection. Relevance. Judge Montgomery's face had gone pale. What kind of documentation, Ms. Reynolds? Amanda's quiet voice carried across the silent courtroom. Financial records, Your Honor. Very interesting financial records. The revelation. The courtroom fell silent as Amanda opened the thin folder. Judge Montgomery's confident demeanor had vanished, replaced by something Amanda had never seen before, fear. Your Honor, Amanda continued, her voice steady despite the magnitude of what she was about to reveal. During my investigation into Mrs. Wilson's case, I discovered some interesting connections. I have here documentation showing that Your Honor owns significant stock in Midwest Banking Corporation. Preston jumped to his feet. Objection. This is completely irrelevant to the foreclosure proceedings. But Judge Montgomery didn't rule on the objection. He sat frozen, his face growing paler by the second. Amanda pressed on. Furthermore, I have records showing that Your Honor purchased additional shares just 2 weeks before Mrs. Wilson received her first delinquency notice. Shares that have increased in value significantly due to the bank's aggressive foreclosure practices. The murmur in the courtroom grew louder. Spectators leaned forward, sensing something unprecedented was happening. Your Honor, Amanda said, looking directly at the judge, according to judicial ethics rules, you should have recused yourself from any case involving Midwest Banking Corporation. Your financial interest in the outcome of this case represents a clear conflict of interest. Judge Montgomery found his voice, though it trembled with rage. Ms. Reynolds, you are out of line. My personal investments are none of this court's business. Actually, Your Honor, they are exactly this court's business. I have copies of your financial disclosure forms, which fail to mention your stake in Midwest Banking. I also have documentation showing regular meetings between yourself and bank executives, including dinners at the Riverside Club just last month. Preston was frantically whispering with his associates, clearly unprepared for this turn of events. The bank's representatives in the gallery looked stunned. Amanda continued methodically. But that's not all, Your Honor. I also have evidence that Mrs. Wilson's payment records were deliberately altered in the bank's computer system. The original database backups, which I obtained through a court order from the Eastern District, show a completely different payment history. She pulled out a thick stack of computer printouts. These records show that Mrs. Wilson never missed a single payment. The delinquency notices were generated after someone manually altered her payment history in the system. Judge Montgomery's hands were shaking now. This is preposterous. You can't prove any intentional wrongdoing. Actually, I can. Amanda's voice was calm, professional. I have sworn testimony from a former Midwest banking employee, Marcus Chen, who was fired for refusing to participate in what he called payment adjustment protocols. He's prepared to testify that bank employees were instructed to create artificial delinquencies for certain targeted homeowners. The courtroom erupted in shocked whispers. Mrs. Wilson's eyes filled with tears, not of sadness, but of vindication. Mr. Chen will testify that Mrs. Wilson's home was specifically targeted because of its prime location and increasing property value. The bank wanted to foreclose and resell at a profit. Preston finally found his voice. Your Honor, none of this has been properly introduced as evidence. This is all hearsay and conjecture. But Amanda was ready for this too. Your Honor, I have all the proper documentation. Court orders for the records, sworn affidavits, and expert testimony about the computer system alterations. Everything has been properly filed and served to opposing counsel. Judge Montgomery realized he was trapped. If he allowed the case to continue, the evidence would be officially entered into the record, creating a scandal that would destroy his career and reputation. If he tried to suppress it, Amanda would appeal, and the story would become public anyway. Your Honor, Amanda said quietly, I believe the proper course of action would be for you to recuse yourself from this case and refer it to another judge. Additionally, the State Bar Association should be notified of these potential ethical violations. The judge's face was now bright red with anger and humiliation. This quiet lawyer he tried to intimidate had just exposed years of corruption in a matter of minutes. Furthermore, Amanda added, delivering the final blow, I've prepared a complete report for the FBI's Financial Crimes Division, detailing what appears to be a pattern of judicial corruption and bank fraud affecting dozens of homeowners across the city. Judge Montgomery realized that his career, his reputation, and possibly his freedom were hanging in the balance. The woman he'd underestimated had just dismantled his entire world with nothing but careful research and legal precision. The reckoning. Judge Montgomery sat in stunned silence as the weight of Amanda's revelation settled over the courtroom. His 20-year career, his reputation, his planned political future, all crashing down because of one quiet lawyer who had done her homework. Your Honor, Amanda said, her voice cutting through the tension, I'm formally requesting that you recuse yourself from this case immediately. The evidence of conflict of interest is overwhelming. Preston, realizing his client's case was collapsing, made a desperate attempt to salvage the situation. Your Honor, even if there are questions about peripheral matters, the core foreclosure case remains valid. The bank is still owed money. Amanda turned to face Preston directly. Actually, Mr. Preston, no money is owed. Mrs. Wilson's account shows a credit balance of $3,847 when the correct payment records are applied. The bank actually owes her money. She pulled out another document. This is an accounting prepared by a certified forensic accountant, showing that not only did Mrs. Wilson never miss payments, but she overpaid by making additional principal payments that were never properly credited to her account. Mrs. Wilson gasped softly. I've been paying extra whenever I could, trying to pay off the house early. That's right, Amanda confirmed. Those extra payments were pocketed by the bank through their payment adjustment protocols. Judge Montgomery finally spoke, his voice hoarse. This court will take a 30-minute recess. He stood abruptly and disappeared into his chambers. During the recess, Preston approached Amanda. Ms. Reynolds, perhaps we can discuss a settlement. The bank is willing to. No settlements, Amanda interrupted. Mrs. Wilson wants her day in court, and she's going to get it. Along with punitive damages for the emotional distress this fraudulent foreclosure has caused. When court reconvened, Judge Montgomery looked like he'd aged 10 years in 30 minutes. After careful consideration, he announced, his voice barely above a whisper, I am recusing myself from this case due to potential conflicts of interest. This matter will be transferred to Judge Harrison in the Eastern District. But Amanda wasn't finished. Before this court is adjourned, Your Honor, I'm filing a motion for immediate sanctions against Midwest Banking Corporation for fraud, and I'm requesting that the State Attorney General's office investigate this matter. The bank's representatives were already filing out of the courtroom, their faces grim. Preston gathered his papers hastily, avoiding eye contact with anyone. Furthermore, Amanda continued, I'm requesting that this court issue an immediate restraining order preventing Midwest Banking from proceeding with any foreclosures until this matter is fully investigated. Judge Montgomery, knowing he had no choice, granted the request. So ordered. This court is adjourned. As the gavel fell, Mrs. Wilson grabbed Amanda's hand. I can't believe it. I can't believe you did all this for me. Amanda smiled, the first genuine smile she'd shown all day. Everyone deserves justice, Mrs. Wilson. Everyone. As they left the courtroom, Richard Barnes caught up with them in the hallway. Amanda, that was incredible. I've never seen anything like it. The evidence spoke for itself, Amanda replied modestly. I just made sure it was heard. But the real victory was yet to come. Within hours, news of the courtroom revelation had spread throughout the legal community. By evening, it was the lead story on local television news. Judge Montgomery's corruption scandal and the bank's fraudulent practices were front-page news. Mrs. Wilson would not only keep her home but would receive substantial damages. More importantly, Amanda's investigation had exposed a network of corruption that had victimized dozens of homeowners across the city. The quiet lawyer who preferred to work alone had just struck a blow for justice that would resonate far beyond one courtroom. But she wasn't done yet. The real work was just beginning. Justice served. 3 months later, Amanda sat in a different courtroom, this time as a witness in the federal criminal trial of former Judge William Montgomery. The corruption case had exploded into a nationwide scandal, with investigations launched in multiple states. Mrs. Wilson's case had been the key that unlocked everything. Judge Harrison, who took over the proceedings, ruled swiftly in her favor. Not only did she keep her home, but she received $150,000 in damages from Midwest Banking Corporation. More importantly, she got something money couldn't buy: vindication. "You saved my home," Mrs. Wilson had told Amanda after the final ruling. "But you did more than that. You saved my faith that the system still works when good people stand up." The ripple effects continued to spread. Marcus Chen, the former bank employee who provided crucial testimony, was granted whistleblower protection. His evidence led to the discovery of over 200 fraudulent foreclosures orchestrated by the bank's payment adjustment protocols. Preston and Associates faced disciplinary action from the state bar. James Preston himself was suspended from practice for 6 months for his role in the scheme. The prestigious firm's reputation was in ruins. Midwest Banking Corporation paid $50 million in fines and settlements to affected homeowners. 3 executives were criminally charged, and the bank's foreclosure division was shut down permanently. But it was Judge Montgomery's fall from grace that captured the most attention. The man who had ruled with an iron fist for 20 years was sentenced to 5 years in federal prison for bribery, fraud, and corruption. His political aspirations died with his conviction. Amanda had become something of a celebrity in legal circles, though she remained uncomfortable with the attention. She turned down multiple interview requests and job offers from major firms. Instead, she opened her own practice specializing in cases that larger firms wouldn't touch, representing ordinary people against powerful institutions. On a quiet Tuesday morning, 6 months after that fateful day in Montgomery's courtroom, Amanda received a letter that brought tears to her eyes. Dear Ms. Reynolds. You don't know me, but I read about your case in the newspaper. My name is Robert Martinez, and I've been fighting Midwest Banking for 3 years over my family's farm. After seeing what you did for Mrs. Wilson, I finally have hope that someone will listen to my story. Would you be willing to take my case? Respectfully, Robert Martinez. Amanda smiled as she reached for her phone. This was exactly why she'd become a lawyer, to help people like Robert Martinez and Eleanor Wilson, ordinary citizens who needed someone to stand up for them against corruption and greed. Mrs. Wilson stopped by the office that afternoon, as she did every Tuesday. She'd become Amanda's unofficial secretary, helping organize files and greeting clients. Her presence was a daily reminder of why the work mattered. Another victory letter? Mrs. Wilson asked, noticing the smile on Amanda's face. The beginning of one, I hope, Amanda replied, showing her Robert's letter. Mrs. Wilson nodded approvingly. You know, before all this happened, I thought the system was rigged against people like us. But you proved that truth and justice still matter, even when they're up against money and power. Amanda had learned something important during those months of preparation and that dramatic day in court. She'd discovered that quiet determination and careful preparation could triumph over corruption and intimidation. She'd found her calling, not in the spotlight of high-profile cases, but in the shadows where ordinary people needed extraordinary help. The corrupt judge who had tried to humiliate her was behind bars. The fraudulent bank had been exposed and punished. Mrs. Wilson was safe in her home, surrounded by 40 years of memories. But perhaps most importantly, Amanda Reynolds had discovered that sometimes the most powerful weapon in a courtroom isn't a booming voice or an expensive suit, it's the quiet truth, carefully prepared and courageously presented. As she prepared for her next case, Amanda reflected on how much had changed since that intimidating morning when she'd walked through the courthouse doors. She was still the same quiet lawyer who preferred to work alone, but now she knew that one person, armed with the truth, could make a difference. The system worked, when people like Amanda Reynolds were willing to make it work. The end.